Hello, welcome to the World War Lab channel. August 17, 1943. Allied Forces Headquarters, Algiers, North Africa. General Dwight D. Eisenhower sat alone at his desk, carefully reviewing the latest casualty reports from the Sicily campaign. The invasion had been a success. Messina had fallen only hours earlier, marking the first major Allied victory on European soil. Congratulatory messages were stacked across his desk. Cables from Washington, from London, and even one personally from Winston Churchill himself. Yet the Supreme Commander showed no sign of satisfaction. There was no smile on his face, no sense of celebration in his eyes. An aide stepped into the doorway, holding a manila folder stamped with the words, "Eyes Only," in bold red ink. Eisenhower looked up immediately. The aide's face was pale, almost drained of color. Without a word, he placed the folder on the desk and stepped back. Eisenhower opened it. The moment his eyes scanned the first page, his expression changed completely. It was as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Time itself seemed to pause. America's most famous general had just learned that one of his top commanders had committed an act that could shatter the entire Allied command structure. If you want to uncover the untold stories of World War II, the decisions that reshaped history, and the men who stood behind them, subscribe to WW2 Elite right now. Hit the like button and leave a comment telling me which World War II commander you want to hear about next. Now, let's get into the story. Inside the folder were two medical incident reports, two different evacuation hospitals in Sicily, two American soldiers, and one name that appeared in both documents, Lieutenant General George S. Patton, Jr., commander of the U.S. 7th Army, the man who had just won Sicily. The first report was dated August 3, 1943. Location: the 15th Evacuation Hospital near Nicosia, Sicily. Patton had arrived for what was supposed to be a routine morale visit. He walked past rows of wounded men suffering from shrapnel injuries, gunshot wounds, burns, soldiers missing arms or legs. Then he stopped at one particular bed. A soldier was sitting upright. There were no visible injuries, no bandages, no bloodstains. His name was Private Charles H. Cole, 26 years old. The diagnosis written on his chart read, psychoneurosis anxiety state, moderately severe battle fatigue, what civilians would later call shell shock, and what modern medicine recognizes as post-traumatic stress disorder. Patton read the diagnosis. Then he looked directly at Cole. "What's wrong with you?" Patton demanded. Cole lifted his eyes slowly. His hands were shaking. I guess I just can't take it anymore, sir." According to the medical officer's report filed that same day, Patton's face turned red with anger. He called Cole a coward and slapped him across the face with his gloves. Once, then again. Patton grabbed Cole by the collar and dragged him toward the entrance of the tent. "You're going back to the front," Patton shouted. "You're going back to fight or you're going to be shot." Then he turned to the hospital commander, Colonel Donald Carter. "Do not admit this man," Patton ordered. "I won't have cowards in the same hospital as my brave wounded soldiers." Nurses stood frozen in place. Doctors did not move. Cole was escorted out of the hospital tent. That night, the medical staff filed an official report documenting everything that had happened. Eisenhower stared at the first report for a long moment. Then he turned the page. The second incident had occurred 7 days later, on August 10, 1943. A different hospital, the 93rd Evacuation Hospital, nearly 50 miles from the first location. Once again, Patton was making a morale visit. Once again, he walked among the wounded. And once again, he found another soldier with no visible physical injuries. The soldier's name was Private Paul G. Bennett, 29 years old, 3 years of service, an outstanding military record. Bennett was sitting on a cot, sobbing uncontrollably. His best friend had been killed right in front of him the day before. He could not stop shaking. Patton stopped in front of him. "What's the matter with you?" he asked. Bennett looked up, tears streaming down his face. "It's my nerves, sir." According to sworn statements from the medical personnel who were present, Patton exploded. He screamed at Bennett, called him a coward, and slapped him across the face. Then Patton drew his pistol, a Colt .45, and waved it inches from Bennett's face. "You ought to be lined up against the wall and shot," Patton said. Then he struck Bennett again, so hard that the liner of his helmet flew off his head and skidded across the tent floor. A nurse, Lieutenant Mabel Garrett, witnessed the entire incident. She filed a report within the hour. Colonel Carter, the same medical officer from the first incident, sent an urgent cable to higher command. 2 incidents, 7 days apart, 50 miles apart, multiple witnesses, official complaints, medical documentation, and both soldiers diagnosed with the same condition that Patton refused to recognize: battle fatigue. Eisenhower closed the folder and leaned back in his chair. His chief of staff, Lieutenant General Walter Bedell Smith, stood quietly near the window. "Both soldiers?" Eisenhower asked. "He struck both of them?" "Yes, sir," Smith replied, "with witnesses." Medical officers filed official reports. "George knows better," Eisenhower said quietly. "He saw shell shock in the First World War. He commanded tanks at the Meuse-Argonne. He knows what combat does to men." "He doesn't believe in it, sir," Smith said. "He thinks they're cowards." He said it in front of the entire medical staff at both hospitals. Eisenhower stood and walked to the map hanging on the wall. Sicily, the positions of the 7th Army. 200,000 men under Patton's command. 200,000 soldiers who had just delivered the largest Allied victory of the war. And every one of them would eventually know what their commander had done. "Get me every detail," Eisenhower said, "and find out who else knows." Smith hesitated. "Sir, there's one more thing." "What is it?" "War correspondent Drew Pearson has the story. He's sitting on it, but he won't wait forever. Maybe 72 hours. Maybe less." Eisenhower turned slowly from the map. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he spoke. "Get me Bradley, get me Bliss, and get me everyone who witnessed these incidents. I want sworn statements. I want medical evaluations. And I want to know if Patton has ever done this before." What Eisenhower did not yet know was that within 72 hours, this would be front-page news across America. And the decision he made in the next 48 hours would determine whether the Allies had a real chance of winning this war. 3 hours later, Eisenhower's office. General Omar Bradley arrived first, commander of 2 corps under Patton during the Sicily campaign. He sat across from Eisenhower. General Frederick Bliss, the theater surgeon, entered next, carrying additional medical files. Smith closed the door behind him. The 4 men took their seats. Eisenhower opened the folder again. "General Bliss," Eisenhower said, "tell me about Private Cole." Bliss opened his file. "Private Charles Cole, infantry. He had been in continuous combat for 28 days with no relief. His company was overrun 4 times. He was evacuated from the front with a fever of 102 degrees, malaria, chronic dysentery, severe dehydration. The medical officer who examined him noted visible tremors, inability to focus, and signs of acute psychological breakdown. And then General Patton called him a coward and had him removed from the hospital. And the second soldier? Eisenhower asked. "Private Paul Bennett," Bliss continued, "an outstanding service record, 3 years of active duty and no disciplinary issues. He had been stationed at a forward observation post when it was hit. His best friend, a corporal he had served beside since basic training, was killed instantly. Bennett carried the body back to American lines by himself under enemy fire. After that, he collapsed. It was a complete psychological breakdown. When General Patton found him, he was sobbing uncontrollably. Ike, both of these men are soldiers," Bliss said quietly. "Real soldiers. Cole earned a Good Conduct Medal. Bennett volunteered for every patrol his unit ever ran. These are not malingerers. They didn't pretend. They broke. Combat broke them. It happens. Eisenhower turned his eyes to Bradley. Did you know about this when it happened? Not until after Messina fell, Bradley answered. By then, the medical reports were already on their way to you. George kept it quiet, or at least tried to. How many people witnessed these incidents? Eisenhower asked. Bliss checked his notes. At the 15th Evacuation Hospital, 6 members of the medical staff and approximately 20 patients. At the 93rd, 8 medical personnel and at least 30 patients. All of them submitted written statements. Smith spoke from his position near the door. Sir, we have to consider what happens if we relieve him. Patton is seen by the American public as our most aggressive commander. If we fire him, and when they learn why, people will ask why we're protecting soldiers who refuse to fight. They were not refusing to fight, Bliss said sharply. They were medically incapable of fighting. There is a difference. The public won't see a difference, Smith replied. Patton's nickname is Old Blood and Guts. He's the general who wins. If we remove him for disciplining soldiers, we lose credibility. Bradley slowly shook his head. And if we don't remove him, we lose the trust of every soldier in the 7th Army. They watch their commander assault sick men. They will never fully trust him again. Eisenhower stood and walked toward the window. Outside, Algiers was quiet. The Mediterranean stretched endlessly toward the horizon. Somewhere beyond that water, Sicily was celebrating its liberation. American flags were flying over Palermo, over Messina, and in 2 hospitals, 2 broken soldiers were trying to put themselves back together after being shattered even further by their own commander. I'm not relieving him, Eisenhower said. Smith looked up sharply. Not yet, Eisenhower continued. But George is going to fix this personally. I'm ordering him to apologize to both soldiers, to the medical staffs who witnessed it, and to every single division in the 7th Army, in person, in front of the troops. Bradley stared at him. Ike, he'll never do it. He will, Eisenhower said, or I'll relieve him. It's his choice. Eisenhower returned to his desk and pulled out a sheet of paper. I'm writing to George tonight. He'll receive it tomorrow, and he'll have 48 hours to begin these apologies, or I remove him from command. And the press? Smith asked. Pearson won't wait much longer. Let me handle the press, Eisenhower said. Right now, I need to make sure George understands that his career is hanging by a thread, and that thread is his ability to recognize that soldiers are human beings, not machines. The room fell silent. Bliss closed his files. Bradley rose to his feet. Smith opened the door. As they left, Eisenhower began to write. A letter that would define Patton's future. A letter that could either save or destroy one of America's most effective commanders. And a letter that would show whether Eisenhower could balance military necessity with human decency. August 17, 1943. Evening. Eisenhower finished the letter. 3 pages, single-spaced typed. He read it once. Then again. The opening lines acknowledge reality. I am fully aware of the necessity for hardness and toughness on the battlefield. I clearly understand that firm and drastic measures are sometimes required in order to achieve desired objectives. But this does not excuse brutality, the abuse of the sick, nor the display of uncontrollable temper in front of subordinates. The next paragraph was colder, sharper, and far more dangerous. I must so seriously question your judgment and your self-discipline as to raise grave doubts in my mind as to your future usefulness. The meaning was unmistakable. One more mistake, and your career is over. Eisenhower signed the letter. He sealed it. He handed it to an aide with a single order. Deliver this directly to General Patton. No delay. The letter left Algiers at night, August 18, 1943. Patton's headquarters, Palermo, Sicily. The letter arrived. Patton read it alone. In his diary that night, he wrote, I am at a loss to find words to express my chagrin and grief at having given you a man to whom I owe everything and for whom I would gladly lay down my life, cause for displeasure with me. But what Patton did not write in his diary was what he said aloud to his staff. Major General Jeffrey Keyes, Patton's deputy, was present when he read the letter. According to Keyes' later testimony, Patton's first reaction was fury. "Ike is wrong," Patton said. "Those men were cowards. They were faking." Keyes chose his words carefully. "Sir, the medical reports confirmed their conditions. Both men were genuinely ill." Battle fatigued, Patton said with contempt, "There's no such thing. It's cowardice. Plain and simple." "Sir," Keyes replied, "General Eisenhower is ordering you to apologize to both soldiers and to every division in the 7th Army." Patton stared at him. "He's serious." "Yes, sir. And if I don't, he'll relieve you." Patton sat down heavily. For a long moment, he said nothing. Finally, he spoke. "Then I'll apologize." And so began what soldiers would later call the apology tour. Division by division, Patton stood in front of thousands of assembled troops and read a prepared statement. At the 1st Infantry Division, the big red one, soldiers tried to shout him down before he could finish. "It's all right, General," they yelled. "We understand." But Patton read every word anyway. At the 3rd Infantry Division, men began chanting "no, no, no" when he mentioned the incidents. Patton's voice cracked. He struggled to continue. At the 45th Infantry Division, Patton broke down in the middle of the speech. He had to stop, collect himself, and then go on. Every division heard the same message. General Patton had acted incorrectly. He should not have struck those soldiers. He regretted his actions. He asked for understanding. But the damage had already been done. Word spread throughout the 7th Army. America's toughest general had been forced to apologize for being too tough. Some soldiers respected him more for admitting his mistake. Others lost faith in him completely. The Army fractured in ways that could not be easily repaired, and Eisenhower knew it. What Eisenhower did not tell anyone, not even General Marshall, was that it had already made a decision about Patton that would change the course of the war itself. September 1943. Washington, D.C. Eisenhower's letter reaches General George C. Marshall, Chief of Staff of the Army. Marshall reads a report and immediately calls Eisenhower. "Ike, is Patton finished?" "Not if I can help it," Eisenhower replies. "We need him for what?" Marshall asks. "He just assaulted 2 of his own men. Congress is already asking questions. If this goes public, we'll have to court-martial him." "Then we don't let go public," Eisenhower says. "We contain it, we manage it, and we use George where he is most effective." Marshall pauses. "Which is where?" Eisenhower hesitates. "I'll tell you when the time is right. But trust me, George is about to win us the war. He just doesn't know it yet." Marshall doesn't fully understand. Not yet, but he trusts Eisenhower. And for now, he agrees to keep the scandal contained. October 1943. The press still does not have the full story. Drew Pearson, the war correspondent, continues pushing for confirmation, but Eisenhower's staff stonewalls him at every turn. No comment, no confirmation, no denial, only silence. Patton completes the apology tour. He visits every division. He shakes hands with Private Cole. He meets privately with Private Bennett. Both soldiers accept his apologies quietly and without ceremony. The medical staff signs off on the resolution. Eisenhower breathes easier. The crisis is contained, or so he believes. Within 48 hours, 3 United States senators will demand that Patton face a military tribunal, and Eisenhower will be forced to answer directly to the President of the United States. November 21st, 1943. Drew Pearson can no longer hold the story back. He goes on national radio. 40 million Americans tune in to his Sunday night broadcast. Pearson's voice is calm, controlled, professional, but his words hit like a bomb. The subject I'm going to discuss tonight is a top-secret Army matter, which has been a focus of intense debate inside the War Department. The facts have been known to many editors and publishers, but they have patriotically kept them quiet. I would not broadcast them except that two issues are involved. First, the health of our troops. Second, the matter of discipline and leadership in the Army. In other words, whether our soldiers are to be commanded by officers who can think, not merely by those who possess guts. Then Pearson lays out everything. The two soldiers, the two hospitals, the slapping, the pistol, the medical diagnoses, the official reports. Nothing is left out. The next morning, November 22nd, the story is front-page news across America. The New York Times, the Washington Post, the Chicago Tribune. Headlines scream that Patton assaulted 6 soldiers and called them cowards. Editorial pages demand accountability. Senators give fiery speeches. Congressmen call for investigations. The War Department switchboard is flooded with calls. Eisenhower's phone rings nonstop. Secretary of War Henry Stimson calls first. Ike, what in God's name is going on? Eisenhower explains everything. The incidents, the letter, the apologies, the internal resolution. It isn't resolved anymore, Stimson says. 3 senators just demanded a military tribunal. They want Patton court-martialed. They want a public hearing. And they want to know why you covered it up. I didn't cover it up, Eisenhower replies. I handled it internally, as military discipline is supposed to be handled, and the president wants to speak with you tonight. That evening, Eisenhower speaks with President Franklin D. Roosevelt over a secure telephone line. The conversation lasts 30 minutes. No transcript exists, but in his memoirs, Eisenhower records that Roosevelt asked him only one question. Do we need Patton to win this war? Yes, sir, Eisenhower answered. We do. Then make this go away, Roosevelt said. I don't care how. Just make it go away. And Eisenhower did. Over the next 2 weeks, he holds press conferences. He releases carefully worded statements. He explains the incidents in clinical terms. He emphasizes that Patton apologized, that both soldiers accepted those apologies, and that the matter was resolved under military justice. And he makes one thing unmistakably clear. Patton is still a general, still in command, still serving. The press is not satisfied. Congress is not satisfied. But Roosevelt stands behind Eisenhower. Slowly, the scandal begins to fade. By December 1943, the headlines move on. The Eastern Front, planning for the invasion of France. Patton disappears from the front pages. And that is when something strange begins to happen. What no one yet realizes is that Eisenhower is about to use this scandal to execute the greatest deception operation in military history. December 1943, Patton is removed from command of the 7th Army. Officially, it is described as a routine rotation. Unofficially, everyone knows the truth. Patton is finished. He is toxic, radioactive. No commander wants to serve under him. No politician wants to defend him. He sits in a hotel in Palermo. He writes bitter entries in his diary. He drinks. He waits for orders that never come. Weeks pass. Christmas. New Year's. January 1944. Then the orders arrive. Report to London immediately. Patton is confused. Why London? There is no command for him in England. The invasion of France is being planned, but Eisenhower has not spoken to him in months. Still, Patton packs his bags. He flies to London. He reports to Allied headquarters. And he is given the strangest assignment of his career. February 1944. Patton is appointed commander of the 1st United States Army Group, 60 divisions, the largest American army ever assembled, staging areas near Dover. Preparation for the invasion of France. There is only one problem. The 1st United States Army Group does not exist. It is completely fake. Inflatable tanks, dummy landing craft, fake airfields, false headquarters, fake radio traffic, entire divisions that exist only on paper. And Patton, America's most famous general, is now commanding an army that isn't real. At first, Patton does not understand. He is furious. "You're turning me into a training commander," he says to Eisenhower. "After everything I've done, you're sidelining me." "This is not a training command," Eisenhower replies carefully. "This is the most important command in the entire European theater." "It's fake," Patton snaps. "This army doesn't exist." "The Germans don't know that," Eisenhower says. And that's the point. Eisenhower walks him through the plan. Operation Fortitude. The Allied deception operation designed to convince Hitler that the invasion will come at Pas-de-Calais, not Normandy. Fake armies, fake preparations, fake intelligence leaks. Everything designed to keep German divisions pinned far away from the real landing beaches. And at the center of it all, Eisenhower says, "Is you." Patton stares at him. "German intelligence believes you are our best field commander." Eisenhower continues. "They will never believe we would bench you. So if we put you in command of Fusag, they will be convinced that this is where the real invasion is coming. They'll keep their best divisions at Calais waiting for you. And while they're waiting, we'll land in Normandy." Patton stared at him. "You're using me as a decoy." "I'm using you to win the war," Eisenhower replied. "The slapping scandal made you too controversial to command the invasion, but it also made you famous. The Germans know your name. They know your reputation. They believe you're too valuable to sideline, which means they will believe Fusag is real as long as you're in command." Patton sat down. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then quietly, "This is punishment for Sicily, isn't it?" "This is necessity," Eisenhower answered. "And if it works after Normandy, you'll get your command back. I promise." Patton accepted the assignment. For the next 4 months, he played his role perfectly. He inspected inflatable tanks. He delivered speeches to divisions that didn't exist. He made public appearances near Dover. He allowed himself to be photographed studying fake invasion maps and reviewing imaginary battle plans. German intelligence tracked every movement. Radio intercepts confirmed it. Hitler's staff became convinced that Fusag was real, that Patton was in command, and that the invasion would come at Calais. June 6, 1944. D-Day. Allied forces stormed the beaches of Normandy. Paratroopers dropped behind enemy lines. Naval bombardments shook the coast. It was the largest amphibious invasion in history. And at Calais, more than 150 miles away, 19 German divisions sat waiting for Patton, waiting for Fusag, waiting for an attack that never came. Hitler refused to release those divisions, even as the fighting raged in Normandy, even as American soldiers pushed inland. He kept 19 divisions locked at Calais, just in case Patton was coming. Days passed, a week passed. The Normandy beachhead expanded. German commanders sent urgent requests. Release the Calais divisions. Send them to Normandy. But Hitler refused. Captured German communications later revealed his order. The enemy's main force remains in England. Army Group Patton has not yet been committed. We must wait. The deception worked. Fusag, the ghost army, the inflatable tanks, the fake radio traffic, all of it worked. Because the Germans could not believe that America would sideline George S. Patton for something as trivial as slapping 2 soldiers. To them, it was impossible. And that impossibility is exactly what made the deception succeed. While they waited, thousands of Allied soldiers lived. Thousands more made it off the beaches. The invasion succeeded because Patton, the disgraced general, the man who had assaulted his own soldiers, played the most important role of all. He became the lie that protected the truth. August 1st, 1944. Patton finally received a real command. The United States Third Army was activated in France. Not a phantom force. A real army. 12 divisions. 240,000 men. Patton said goodbye to Fusag, the fake command that had helped win the real war. Before leaving the front, He reported to Eisenhower's headquarters. The meeting was brief. Eisenhower stood behind his desk. Maps of France covered the walls. Patton saluted. Eisenhower returned it. "George," Eisenhower said, "before you leave, that letter I wrote you last year." Patton's expression tightened. "The one about Sicily. Do you understand now why I couldn't just cover it up?" Patton didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "You sidelined me because I embarrassed the Army." "I sidelined you because you broke the one rule that matters more than winning battles," Eisenhower replied. "What rule is that?" Eisenhower walked around the desk and stood directly in front of Patton, eye to eye. "Soldiers will follow you into hell, George. But first, they have to trust that you'll recognize hell when they're in it." Patton held his gaze. Private Cole was in hell, Eisenhower continued. 28 days of continuous combat. Malaria, dysentery, watching his friends die. And when he couldn't take it anymore, you called him a coward. Private Bennett watched his best friend get blown apart in front of him. He carried the body back under fire. And when he broke, you drew your pistol and threatened to shoot him. You didn't recognize hell, George. You added to it. "They were soldiers," Patton said quietly. "Soldiers fight. That's what we do." "Soldiers fight until they can't," Eisenhower replied. "And when they can't, we take care of them. We don't break them further. That's what you failed to understand. That's what that letter was about." Eisenhower returned to his desk and picked up a folder. Patton's new orders. "You're getting your army back," Eisenhower said, "because we need you, because you're one of the best field commanders we have. But you're also getting it because you learned the difference between hardness and cruelty, between discipline and brutality, between a soldier who won't fight and a soldier who can't fight." Patton took the folder, but did not open it. "What if I hadn't learned?" "Then you'd be retired," Eisenhower said bluntly, "and we'd be fighting this war without you." Patton nodded slowly. "I still don't believe in battle fatigue," he said. "I know," Eisenhower replied, "but you believe in soldiers, and that's enough." Patton saluted. Eisenhower returned it. "Go in the war, George." "Yes, sir." Patton turned to leave. At the door, he stopped. Without turning around, he spoke. "Ike, that letter you wrote, the one where you said you questioned my usefulness. You were right. I wasn't useful. Not the way I was. Not when I didn't understand what those soldiers were going through. I do now. I didn't then, but I do now." Eisenhower nodded. "That's all I needed to hear. Now go. The Third Army is waiting." Patton left. The door closed. Eisenhower sat alone. He opened his personal diary and wrote a single entry about the meeting, about Patton, about the slapping incidents, and everything that had followed. The entry ended with one line. "George is finally ready. God help the Germans." The letter Eisenhower wrote to Patton on August 17, 1943, contained 173 words, but the most important of them were these. "I am well aware of the necessity for hardness and toughness on the battlefield. I clearly understand that firm and drastic measures are at times necessary in order to secure the desired objectives. But this does not excuse brutality, abuse of the sick, nor the exhibition of uncontrollable temper in front of subordinates." This was never just a letter about military discipline. It was about the difference between strength and cruelty, about the line every commander must walk, between demanding excellence and recognizing human limits. Eisenhower understood that line. Patton did not, at least not at first, not until he was forced to learn it. The letter continued. "I must so seriously question your good judgment and your self-discipline as to raise serious doubt in my mind as to your future usefulness." Eisenhower was not questioning Patton's usefulness because he was a poor general. He was questioning it because usefulness in war requires more than tactical brilliance. It requires understanding the men you lead, understanding what they can endure, and knowing when they have reached their breaking point. Patton's usefulness depended on his ability to see soldiers as human beings, not as machines. That was what Eisenhower was testing. And Patton passed, but only barely. He commanded the Third Army from August 1944 to May 1945. He never struck another soldier. The numbers tell Patton's story. The Third Army advanced more than 600 miles across Europe. They liberated over 81,000 square miles of territory. They captured 1,280,688 German prisoners. They eliminated 144,500 enemy soldiers across 12 major campaigns. Metz, Bastogne, the Bulge, Czechoslovakia. The Third Army became the most feared American unit on the Western Front. But none of that would have happened without Eisenhower's letter, without the apology tour, without the lesson Patton learned the hard way. Soldiers are not machines. They break, and when they do, a real commander takes care of them. Private Charles Cole, the first soldier Patton struck, was quietly transferred to another unit. He returned to combat. He fought through France. He fought through Germany. He earned a Bronze Star for valor. After the war, he never spoke publicly about the incident. He went home to Indiana. He lived a quiet life. He died in 1971. Private Paul Bennett, the second soldier, returned to his unit in September 1943. He rejoined his company. He fought in Italy, then in France. On August 3, 1944, exactly 1 year after Patton struck the first soldier, Private Paul Bennett was killed in action by a sniper's bullet near St. Lo. He was buried in the Normandy American Cemetery. His family never learned the full story of what happened in that hospital tent. They only knew he served with honor, that he died a soldier, and that he gave everything. After the war ended, Eisenhower wrote about Patton in his memoir Crusade in Europe. He dedicated an entire chapter to managing difficult commanders. And in that chapter, he wrote about the slapping incidents. Patton's problem, Eisenhower explained, was that he believed in total war. War with everything and everyone committed to absolute ruthlessness. What he never fully grasped was that total war still requires individual soldiers who believe they are fighting for something worth the sacrifice. Without that belief, without that trust, an army becomes nothing more than exhausted men with guns. And exhausted men with guns do not win wars. The slapping incidents revealed something fundamental. An army is not a machine. It is not steel bullets and tactics. It is human beings, thousands of them, each with limits, each with a breaking point. A good commander recognizes those limits. A good commander knows when to push and when to protect. Patton learned that lesson, but he learned it late, and 2 soldiers paid the price for his education. General Omar Bradley later reflected on the incident. He said, "George won more battles after Sicily than before it. Not because he learned to be gentle. George was never gentle, but because he learned the difference between a soldier who won't fight and a soldier who can't fight. One deserves a court-martial. The other deserves a hospital bed." George finally understood that distinction, and that made him a better commander. Eisenhower's letter, the one written on August 17, 1943, accomplished what no direct order ever could. It forced Patton to confront his own failures. It made him apologize. It made him face his soldiers. It made him human. And in doing so, it saved his career. It saved his usefulness. And it saved the lives of thousands of soldiers who would later serve under him in the Third Army. On December 9, 1945, 6 months after the war ended, General George S. Patton was critically injured in a car accident near Mannheim, Germany. His neck was broken. He was paralyzed from the shoulders down. He spent 12 days in a hospital bed, unable to move, knowing he would never walk again. On December 21, 1945, he died. He was 60 years old. In his final days, he received many visitors, generals, old friends, staff officers, and one visitor who surprised everyone. Private Charles Cole, the soldier Patton had struck in Sicily, the soldier Patton had called a coward. Cole traveled to Germany specifically to see him. They spoke privately. No one else was present. Cole never revealed what they said to each other. He never gave interviews about it. He never wrote about it. When reporters asked him years later, he said only this: some things between soldiers remain private. That is where the story ends. Not with battles, not with victories, but with two men, a general and a private, both scarred by war, both trying to understand what it means to lead and what it means to forgive. If you made it to the end of this story, you are part of a small group who truly cares about World War II history, and that means a lot. Subscribe to World War Lab for more untold stories like this. Hit that like button. Drop a comment and tell me what you think. Did Eisenhower make the right call? Could Patton have become a better leader without that letter? This is World War Lab.